Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen were once considered the quintessential couple of the 1980s, representing two major pillars of American entertainment, television and rock music. After nearly 3 decades together, they separated quietly, and the truth behind their split remained hidden for almost 20 years. Now, Valerie Bertinelli has finally revealed the real reason their marriage fell apart, and it's darker than the public ever imagined. "I knew the man for 40 years. I was 20 when I met him. I still loved him," she confessed. Valerie met Teddy in 1980, already a household name thanks to her role as Barbara Cooper on the TV series One Day at a Time. At the time, her career was on a steady rise, and she was widely seen as Hollywood's good girl. Eddie, meanwhile, was a legendary frontman of Van Halen, a band dominating the charts with hits like Jump in Panama and selling out arenas worldwide. They came from opposite worlds, Valerie from wholesome, family-friendly television, and Eddie from the wild, often chaotic world of rock. They met after an interview, where Eddie was instantly captivated by Valerie's charm and smile. They began dating quickly, and just months later, on April 11, 1981, they married in a private ceremony in California. The union sparked interest in the entertainment world because of their contrasting images. Eddie had just completed the intense album Fair Warning, while Valerie was still making weekly appearances on national TV. Their demanding work schedules often kept them apart, though Valerie frequently joined Eddie on tour, trying to merge his unpredictable lifestyle with a more grounded domestic one. In 1991, they welcomed their son Wolfgang Van Halen. Valerie would later call his birth the best thing that ever happened to her, even admitting it was also a last attempt to keep their family whole. "I had a million girls' names, but I just had Wolfgang, and he totally fits his name," she said. Valerie pulled back from long-term projects to focus on raising her son, striving to balance her roles as mother, wife, and public figure. Meanwhile, Eddie continued to live a rock-star life, often missing key family moments, while Valerie struggled behind the scenes to hold everything together. Throughout the 1990s, she remained committed, even as Eddie's health began to deteriorate, but their personal struggles were never made public. They continued appearing at events as a seemingly united family, though their bond was already breaking. In October 2001, the couple confirmed their separation, and on December 20th, 2007, after 26 years together, their divorce was finalized. The split came without scandal or drama. Valerie stayed silent afterward, focusing on her career, publishing cookbooks, and creating a stable life for her son. Eddie, on the other hand, receded from the spotlight, battling health issues and a fading career. Then, nearly 2 decades later, Valerie finally opened up about the painful truth in her 2008 memoir, Losing It. She revealed that Eddie had struggled with cocaine addiction for most of their marriage, drank heavily, and regularly spiraled out of control. Though she never stopped loving him, Valerie admitted she stopped being his partner and instead became someone surviving his addiction. One particularly heartbreaking revelation was Eddie's refusal to quit smoking, even after being diagnosed with mouth cancer. Valerie disclosed that he had 1/3 of his tongue surgically removed, but still continued to smoke and drink hard liquor, a self-destructive pattern she described as a slow suicide. Self-destruction became a defining theme in Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen's marriage. "I loved his soul," Valerie wrote, "but I hated his alcohol and drugs, not him." The pain didn't come only from Eddie's addiction. Valerie also admitted to having an affair during a deeply fractured time in their relationship. She explained that the betrayal came from a place of emotional abandonment. "I just wanted to feel affection, to be cared for by someone," she wrote in Losing It, adding that she couldn't find that comfort in her own home. Eddie, too, had his share of affairs, especially while on tour. Their silence about these betrayals created an invisible wall between them, neither fully confronting the reality, yet both too emotionally distant to hold on. By the early 2000s, Valerie's mental health had begun to deteriorate. She developed an eating disorder, gained weight uncontrollably, and withdrew from the public eye. In a later interview with Oprah, she admitted that after their separation, she isolated herself, avoiding even close friends and family, choosing instead to focus entirely on raising their son. "I lost control inside and out," she said. It wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the end of the illusion that love could save someone. In 2022, through a second memoir, Enough Already, Valerie offered a more reflective perspective. Years of therapy and sobriety had given her clarity. This time, her words carried less defensiveness and more acceptance. She described her marriage to Eddie as beautiful but ravaged, acknowledging that they were simply too young and unprepared to handle the pressures of fame, addiction, and isolation. She also admitted that her efforts to play the role of a strong, loyal wife had largely been a facade, a way to avoid public judgment. In 2024, after watching Behind the Music, a documentary by their son Wolfgang Van Halen, Valerie posted a heartfelt video on Instagram that went viral. In it, she candidly said for the first time that Eddie was not her soulmate, as she once believed. "I was in love with an idealized version of him. I was ready to play the grieving widow, but the truth is, we hadn't been a couple for 20 years. What moved her to speak, she explained, was witnessing her son's pain. Watching my son hurt made me realize that staying silent is no longer the right choice." Her statement sparked public debate. Some applauded Valerie for her honesty and bravery, especially since addiction remains a sensitive topic in the entertainment industry. Others criticized her, suggesting that speaking openly about a deceased icon could damage Eddie's legendary image. Valerie, however, remained calm and resolute. "I'm not sharing this to diminish anyone. I'm sharing it so people like me don't have to stay silent." Through that act, Valerie transformed her story from a celebrity divorce into something far more powerful, a message for those trapped in the shadows of painful relationships. Still, one crucial point she made was that her account should not lead people to believe there was no love or connection. Despite everything, she and Eddie shared an unbreakable bond. Though their marriage legally ended in 2007, their connection endured. They stayed in touch, maintained mutual respect, and focused their shared energy on raising Wolfgang, whom they both considered the heart of their lives. There were no legal battles, no public fights over property. Their relationship quietly evolved into something different, no longer husband and wife, but still a team. At Wolfgang's major milestones, Valerie and Eddie often appeared together, united in support of their son. In 2006, Wolfgang joined Van Halen as bassist, replacing Michael Anthony, a move that stirred controversy among fans. But both Eddie and Valerie gave Wolfgang their full support. Valerie once said, "Even though we're no longer a traditional family, we're still a team for Wolfie." When Eddie's health worsened in 2019 due to throat cancer complications, Valerie was by his side, frequently visiting the hospital with Wolfgang. Eddie's final days were private, without media intrusion, and surrounded only by his closest loved ones. On October 6, 2020, Valerie was at Eddie's bedside as he took his last breath. That same day, she posted a message on Instagram. 35 years ago, my life changed forever when I met you, and today I'm grateful I got to be with you in your final moment." What stood out in Valerie's grief was a deep, unresolved emotional connection she still held. Though they hadn't been married for over a decade, her mourning felt authentic. Not only for a man she once loved, but for a huge chapter of her life that had now definitively closed. Media outlets across the country acknowledged the sincerity in how she commemorated Eddie, recognizing that some bonds, no matter how broken, never completely disappear. In her memoir, Enough Already, Valerie Bertinelli described Eddie Van Halen's final days as deeply sorrowful, yet peaceful. She recalled how they exchanged words of love one last time. "I think he knew I forgave him. I also hope he forgave me," she wrote. For the first time, Valerie made it clear that although they could no longer live together, a form of love still remained between them, no longer romantic, but never fully extinguished. However, her closeness to Eddie in death drew mixed reactions from the public. Some accused her of trying to step back into the spotlight by invoking the memory of her late ex-husband, a legendary musician. Criticism intensified after her 2024 video in which she openly stated that Eddie was not her soulmate and that they hadn't truly been a couple in over 20 years. Rather than defend herself publicly, Valerie responded with a brief yet poignant message on social media. "There are things I stayed silent about for too long, not out of fear of public opinion, but because I wasn't sure I fully understood them myself. Now I just want to speak the truth as part of my healing." Her approach wasn't rooted in sentimental mourning or portraying herself as a grieving widow. Instead, she honored Eddie through a lens of honesty, recognizing him as a great artist, a devoted father, and a man who battled his demons. Their son Wolfgang also noted in interviews that his mother had always encouraged him to see both the strengths and flaws in his father so that he could rise above them rather than repeat them. After Eddie's passing, Valerie entered a new chapter in her life. While many continued to associate her identity with being the ex-wife of a rock legend, she quietly focused on her own path. One of those new paths was a second marriage to financial planner Tom Bertolli, whom she married on January 1st, 2011, after years of dating. The ceremony took place in Malibu, with both Eddie and Wolfgang in attendance. The media praised the occasion as a rare example of a modern, blended family working in harmony. Valerie believed this marriage would be different, rooted in maturity and the lessons learned from her first. But over time, differences in lifestyle and values began to show. By the end of 2021, Valerie filed for legal separation, citing irreconcilable differences. In an emotional Instagram post, she wrote, "I used to believe that if I loved enough, everything could be fixed, but that's not how it works. I gave too much in both marriages and realized I was never loved back the way I hoped to be." Following the separation, Valerie chose not to rush back into public life. During 2022 and 2023, she focused on writing her memoir, adjusting her daily routines, and committing to therapy. It was also during this period that she announced a decision to stop drinking, prioritizing her mental health and emotional recovery. In later interviews, she admitted to living for years in a state of high anxiety and said she was finally learning to say no to the things that emotionally drained her. In March 2024, Valerie made headlines when she revealed a new relationship with writer Mike Goodenough. The two had met through social media, bonding over pop culture and a shared love for writing. Their connection gradually deepened, and they made their first public appearance together at the Daytime Emmy Awards in June. Fans welcomed the relationship as a hopeful sign of healing and new beginnings. However, by November 2024, Valerie confirmed their breakup in an Instagram post, explaining that the separation wasn't due to a lack of affection, but rather external factors. Mike later echoed those sentiments, saying the relationship had been the best part of his year and that the decision to part ways was mutual and respectful. By March 2025, Valerie spoke more candidly about what led her to reassess her romantic relationships. "I've been in 2 marriages where I tried too hard, hoping to be loved unconditionally," she wrote. "Eventually, I realized that loving others can't be a way to fill the emptiness within myself." Her words resonated deeply, especially among middle-aged women navigating the emotional aftermath of divorce and self-discovery. Outside of her personal life, Valerie also faced battles with mental health. In November 2024, Valerie Bertinelli publicly shared her experience with a severe anxiety episode that forced her to pause work for several weeks. Without masking it or skirting around the truth, she admitted, "I used to be afraid of admitting I was tired, but the truth is, I can't keep pretending to be okay." This moment of honesty marked a turning point. She actively joined mental health advocacy efforts, becoming one of the few candid voices in the entertainment industry to speak openly about anxiety and emotional exhaustion. No longer trying to maintain the image of the perfect TV star or ideal wife, Valerie chose instead to show the world who she truly was, a woman who had endured enough to understand that living authentically matters more than preserving appearances. Despite having loved, been disappointed, and attempted to start over more than once, Valerie refused to hide her failures. She embraced them as essential parts of her growth. "Rather than finding someone to make me happy, I'm learning to take responsibility for my own emotions," she said, a mindset that marked a complete departure from the choices she had made in either of her previous marriages. Now, at 65, Valerie Bertinelli no longer defined herself by outdated labels like Eddie Van Halen's ex-wife or 1980s TV star. She has stepped away from those definitions and instead presents herself as a woman living truthfully and on her own terms. With you the most? Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth portraits of Hollywood's most remarkable lives. Halen Hollywood's most remarkable lives.